You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Life sucks. This is the conclusion a lot of us have come to, especially when we look at the experiences we have had that led us to this point. Not all of us are lucky enough to be born to parents who would win the Gold Star Award for their parenting skills. So obviously, there is a little bit of childhood trauma we carry into adulthood, thanks to their ineptitude. Then you have life at school, which isn't generally pleasant for everyone. Most people would tell you that high school was a nightmarish place and that it left them a few emotional, sometimes physical scars. Finally, we get into adulthood. If you are one of the lucky few who had a childhood sweetheart, perhaps you might have been able to escape the horrors of dating. If you are like the rest of us, by the time you get to age 25, you would have suffered at least one heartbreak. Should I get started on all the drama and trauma that comes from family relationships, job politics, financial decisions, and so on? Because if I choose to delve into all the reasons why life sucks, I might need 2 additional books to cover the basics. So what is my point? There is a lot of chaos going on out there in the world, and we attribute our current woes and struggles to this chaos. But if you set aside your material struggles and bad experiences, you will find out that the biggest problem you have had to deal with is not those problems. Not really. You cannot control the chaos. We have a very narrow perspective of who we think we should be when we are in the middle of a crisis. We feel we should be either the victim or the victor. There is no middle ground. So it is either you control life or life controls you. Nobody wants to be a victim because we have a perception of what a victim looks like. Someone who is defeated by the struggles they have gone through in life. Now that doesn't sound appealing, does it? So we all strive to be the victor, the person who conquers those struggles. We feel that by choosing to be victors, we are taking responsibility for what happens to us, and by taking responsibility, we work under the assumption that we must be in control at all times. When I found my Stoic path, I was in the middle of a major life crisis. I had just lost my job. My relationship at that time had just ended, and I was on the verge of losing my home. It was like a trifecta of everything that could go wrong in a person's life. On top of that, I had survived a cancer scare, but that is a story for another day. With all these looming problems around, I knew I needed to get my life back on track. So I threw myself into everything that I believed could transform my life. Thankfully, one of those things was Stoicism. It helped me develop a healthy mentality designed to motivate me to pursue all of my goals. Admittedly, I got it wrong a few times because even though I was adopting these new ideologies, I was still trapped in the old ways of thinking. The only difference was that I was trying to do something new by using an old method. I'm sure this is something you are familiar with. You decide you are starting life over from scratch, and this makes you feel like you are in control. But there is a problem with thinking like this. This kind of thinking forces us into a box that blinds us to the true powers we possess over the experiences that we have in life. One of such powers is perspective. Before we go into perspective, let us explore the illusion of control. When a life-changing event occurs, if it is negative, we focus on the things we have done, the things we could have done, and the things we should have done to get a better outcome. If it is positive, we reflect on the things that we did, praise ourselves for the things that we didn't do, and then plot our next strategy that comprises what we should do to replicate the same experience in other areas. In both instances, there is a pattern of thought behavior that is present. The idea that somehow our actions are the ultimate deciding factor in the experiences that we have. This kind of thinking forces you to feel like a failure when negative things happen to you, especially when you plan everything out in detail. When things are going your way, It gives you an inflated sense of self-importance because now you think you are the big deal, and that can prove to be dangerous because life doesn't always go according to plan. This illusion of control is what makes a person in an abusive relationship take responsibility for the actions of another person. They rationalize their pain by declaring that their actions are what led them to this point, and therefore they deserve what they get. Those of us who are on the outside encourage this kind of thinking because we tell ourselves, and sometimes the person involved, that they should have seen the red flags and taken the right steps to avoid that relationship. The illusion of control is the reason some people experience survivor's guilt. A catastrophic event happened and somehow you survive. But because you think you had some level of control, you feel guilty for surviving when some other people didn't. It doesn't occur to us to change our perspective about control because then we start to think, what is the essence of planning or taking actions if, at the end of the day, life is just going to throw us a curveball that sends us off into the deep end? Again, this brings us to that either-or narrative we have adopted. A victim or a victor. The conquered or the conqueror. The savior or the survivor. We don't stop to think that maybe there is another option, to accept what is going on and then build up a plan from there. This is because we believe that the idea of acceptance robs us of the power to control. We think that acceptance means rolling over and playing dead. But in reality, acceptance allows you to change perspective, and when you change perspective, that is when you are capable of changing your narrative. Dear reader, life will happen to you regardless of how well you plan or how set you are on your mission to accomplish your goals. It is when you accept that you are not in control of what happens that you gain mastery of yourself, and from there, you can begin to operate from a place of peace. The logic behind it is simple. When life happens to you, whether good or bad, you are the common denominator. The elements that bring about those events are not within your control. So if you keep fighting the event, you will keep losing. However, when you accept that those external forces don't need control, your focus is now on the one denominator, which is you. You will learn how to control your emotions and reactions to the things that happen to you. When you learn how to control what happens to you, it becomes next to impossible for those events to dictate your experiences in life. Sounds incredible, right? Well, that is what Stoicism is about, and we are going to take the first step in understanding what Stoicism is and how you can use it to build emotional resilience, master control over your emotions, and quiet the storm on the inside.